Hi, I'm Caroline.
And I'm Adrienne.
And this is Scandal Sheets. Hello and welcome to Scandal Sheets, the podcast that explores the scandals of history along with the people and places associated with them. I am your host, Caroline.
And I'm Adrienne.
Today's subject is King Edward VII of England. And I know it gets a little crazy with all the numbers, but
How many were there total ever?
8.
Oh,
so he's next to last. Don't ask me about the first ones because that goes back into like the medieval times. And,
oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, British medieval history really kind of blows my brain.
The only thing I know about medieval is Renaissance fairs.
Fun.
Which
Turkey legs.
Turkey legs. Exactly.
Okay, so Edward VII was actually born Albert Edward on November 9th, 1841, and he was the second child and first son of Queen Victoria of England and her husband Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. I know, longest name ever.
That's a city. County.
Region.
It's an area like Alsace-Lorraine. Like a...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but they're all hyphenated, or two of them? And
Saxe-Coburg is hyphenated, and then it's Gotha.
And Gotha.
I think it's because they acquired it at a later time period.
Yeah.
And this is pre-unified Germany, so it is in Germany. It's just, there with a bunch of other territories. So we don't get confused with all the names running around in this piece. We are going to call Edward by his nickname Bertie, which...
I always want to say Albie. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Bertie.
I
knew Bertie once, too. That's funny.
You did, really?
I did. He was British.
Of course.
English. Wait. Britain is for Great Britain, but if you're English, like you're from England, so he was English.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Not from Scotland, because that's the same.
They're Scottish.
Island, but
yeah,
but they're also British.
Yeah. No, don't ever call them British.
But it's Great Britain.
Yes, but they don't
so
want to be British.
If you were from the island.
They're most unwillingly British.
Okay.
Yeah, they're still Scottish.
Anyway, but he was English.
Yeah,
so accurate.
I think it's really important that I lay down some of the background for this piece, which if you're not wanting all these details, you might want to flip forward a little bit. But it's important. I feel like it is because a lot of Bertie's childhood was colored by his parents and their little oddities. So his mother, Victoria, who was queen, she was never supposed to be queen. So she's a bit of an anomaly. She was born to Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, who was the son of George III.
Why was she not supposed to be queen?
Well, just because, she was so far down the line.
Oh.
And, she wouldn't have even existed, probably, without the stuff later on that we're getting to.
Okay.
You're jumping ahead.
Not here yet. Sorry.
Yeah. So...
Spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Okay, so he was the son of George III, who was that pesky king who started the American Revolution, since we've talked to him about him before.
Okay.
So, boo!
George, I'm not booing him.
I know.
It's okay.
I won. Yeah, and I always thought it was kind of cute, except for the protruding eyes, but,
King George III was bug-eyed.
Yeah, he was. Oh. All the Hanovers were. It was this bizarre family trait.
Okay.
Even Victoria and Bertie, eventually, they all had kind of buggish eyes. It was very unfortunate. Anyway, George III had many children, like 15. Interestingly enough, 12 or 13 of those kids actually made it to adulthood.
Yeah.
That's very, very unique for that time period, because, this is the 1700s.
Right.
But they were very unlucky in marriage. 3 of the daughters didn't marry at all, and then some of the boys just basically were fooling around, had mistresses, and never got married. So you end up with the first son, who was also a George. We've referenced him in the past as the Prince Regent. He was nicknamed Prinny. He was the Prince Regent because George III had bouts of temporary insanity, basically.
So he would have to take over the duties.
Right. Sometimes it would be for months, and sometimes...
But it's his son?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then sometimes it would be for years. If you've ever seen that movie, The Madness of King George...
I have not. Who plays him?
Oh, shoot. Nigel is a very famous British actor. Shame on me. Nigel somebody. I think he's a sir now because I think he's dead. But he was a sir before he died. So his son, George IV, he was eventually George IV, though the Prince Regent, had a very scandalous life. He had a first marriage to an Irish Catholic, which was definitely a no-no.
That would be frowned upon, right?
Very much so.
Okay.
It was annulled or rendered invalid.
Yeah.
And then he eventually married a German cousin named Caroline. And apparently they hated each other so much that they could only produce one child together before they split up. And
were they forced into this marriage?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it was marriage of convenience.
Okay.
So this child is actually a girl named Charlotte.
Well, they didn't even get a boy out of it.
I know, right? So she's the heir to the throne of England. She marries a German prince named Leopold of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha.
Okay.
And I would like to point out at this point that you definitely need to look Leopold up because he's hot.
Oh.
Totally hot.
Okay. I was not really going to look it up, but now I'm going to.
Yeah, you totally need to look it up.
Okay.
Because, I mean, when I say hot, we're talking modern day movie star hot.
That's really impressive.
It was, yeah.
Because usually you think that they take artistic license in those portraits.
Or you think, oh, well, he's good looking for that time period.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
This guy would. Anyway, not surprisingly, Charlotte got pregnant right after the wedding, basically. Unfortunately, she miscarries the baby. But hope springs eternal when she gets pregnant almost immediately again after that.
Oh, yeah, he's pretty dashing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, young him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Old him, not so much.
No. I like that coat, too. I would totally wear that.
I know.
Oh, sorry. It's a beautiful red coat with epaulettes and a standing collar with all this gold brocade. But it's pretty sexy. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So.
Winner.
So she's pregnant again. Unfortunately, again, she suffers through a 50-hour labor.
No.
That's like 2 days. More than 2 days.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
She gives birth to a stillborn son.
Ugh, after all that.
And then she dies the next day.
Ugh.
Even worse, right? So Leopold actually was in love with her and he's utterly devastated. But because he doesn't really have anything left to do here in England now that the heir to the throne is dead, he moves back to Germany and eventually assumes the throne of Belgium. So he did get a consolation prize. He married again and had like 5 kids too. So
all right. So
yeah.
he lived on.
Yeah. So maybe it was a little bit happy after all that tragedy.
Oh.
But in the wake of all this, England is left with a seriously shaky succession. Of course, George III is still on the throne, sort of, and his son George
He's not mad at the moment.
I think I don't know if he was. I have to look it up.
Mad?
Yeah, at that particular time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So you have his son George, and then you have a lot of other brothers after that. George, because he hated his wife and because she was older, there was no chance that there would be
George
enough.
the Third?
The fourth. Yeah.
Okay.
George IV, because he detests his wife, there's no chance for another heir. No. So he pretty much orders
Lots of people that don't like each other have
take one for
children.
the team. No, I think they were like, in their mid to late 40s, so it probably would have been.
They're almost dead.
In 18th century terms, right? Yeah, sure. Yeah. So basically, George orders all of his younger brothers to find wives and get them knocked up post haste because England needs an heir.
Dang. Get on that.
Yes. And so, as I mentioned earlier, his brothers had plenty of mistresses and illegitimate children, but no wives and legitimate children. So all the brothers are basically kicking their mistresses to the curb and running off to Germany to marry princesses there.
Because they're like outsourcing their wives.
Yeah.
They're not looking to the homeland.
Right. Because there's really no one there.
Right.
I mean,
I guess there's good stock in Germany.
Yeah. They are.
Sure.
They're hardy stock. Yeah. And I can say that because I'm part German.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right.
So 3 of these brothers, they all married German princesses and they proceeded to get busy. But it was George's second youngest brother, Edward, the Duke of Kent. He marries Victoria.
Best wife.
Right.
Okay.
He marries Victoria of Saxe-Coburg, who happens to be the sister of Hot Leopold. So there's a lot of intermarrying going on.
So is she also very pretty, or did he get all the looks?
No, she actually is very pretty.
Okay.
Yeah. She was actually a widow. She had children by her first husband, so it was like, she's going to be fertile.
Oh,
so
okay.
Good choice.
Yeah.
And she was.
You know.
So 11 months to the day of their marriage, the Duchess gives birth to a daughter named Victoria. At this point...
They all name their kids.
I know. Okay. I think they called her name, she was Victoria Alexandrine.
Oh, that's pretty. Okay.
They called her Drina. Her mother called her Drina, so... And she...
Oh, was that in the show?
Yeah, that was in the show.
Okay.
And
there was some funny nickname.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was why they were calling her Drina.
Got it.
Yeah. So we're referencing the PBS Masterpiece Theater show, Victoria.
Yeah. But you should only watch it for Rufus Sewell.
Right.
I mean, most of us do.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
At the point of the new Victoria's birth, she is 5th in line to the throne. So that's pretty far down. I mean, that's Prince Harry far down, if we want to throw to a current situation.
Don't follow all that stuff.
Yeah. So it was basically her grandfather, George III, still on the throne. Her uncle, George IV, is next.
When he's not crazy. When he's not going mad,
he's there.
Okay.
Her uncle, George IV, would be next. Then her uncle, William IV, would be next. And then her father, Edward, and then her. But
so what are the odds? Like, are they pretty bad if you're that far down?
I would think in general, yeah. But in 18 months, George III had died. His son George had assumed the throne. And then Victoria's father died of pneumonia. So Victoria is now number 3 in line.
Oh.
So her chances, definitely improved. Given that, Victoria's mother, the Duchess, is pretty crafty and manipulative. There's very little standing in between her daughter and the throne, so she wants to make sure that Victoria is raised as a future queen.
Okay.
They live in Kensington Palace, which is where all the young royals live now. Mm-hmm. Her education was extensive for a woman of the time period, but it was sadly lacking in constitutional law, which I would think would be very important for a future monarch.
Unless it's somebody else's job to know.
Maybe.
Because she has people.
Right.
You know.
I mean,
a cabinet?
Yeah. I guess they figured, she's a girl. She doesn't need to know about law. Anyway, and she was also sheltered because the Duchess wanted to make sure that Victoria was completely dependent upon her. This was because she figured that if Victoria were to assume the throne before she turned 18, then she would be the regent. She would get to call the shots. So she wanted to make sure that Victoria wouldn't give her any trouble. So Victoria was forced to sleep on a bed in her mother's room.
I'm sure they had...
Victoria was also not allowed to go down the stairs without holding someone's hand.
That's real silly. She was like a teenager.
Right. She wasn't allowed to have any friends.
Why?
They just didn't want her influenced by anybody, I guess. As a result of that, she became very attached to her governess, the Baroness Lesen.
German.
Yep. And her dog, Dash.
Do we know what kind of dog it was?
It was a King Charles Spaniel. They were kind of cute.
Well,
sort of. If they're not yapping.
Right.
Yeah.
They just seem very high maintenance, but I guess it's an appropriate dog for a queen to be.
Yeah.
Princess.
As you can tell, we're both cat people.
No, I like dogs.
Sort of.
Some dogs.
Same way here. Some dogs. So less than a month after Victoria turns 18, on June 20th, 1837, her uncle William IV dies. He took over as king following his older brother George IV's death, but he had no living legitimate issue, though it should be noted that prior to his marriage, he had like 10 illegitimate children with his mistress.
But that doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count. She was an actress. In 1838, Victoria is formally crowned as queen. Her prime minister and closest advisor is Lord Melbourne, who was the widower of poor crazy lady Caroline Lamb from last week, also played by the gorgeous Rufus Sewell. She learns a lot from him, but I don't think it is a romantic relationship like they portray it in the show.
It was a little creepy.
Yeah. There might have been a little crush there, but I think in general they had more of a father-daughter type relationship because her father died when she was just a baby.
They may have played that up for
I think they did.
Sake.
Yeah, I agree. So while she's really close to him and he wants to give her a chance to learn some things, the rest of her advisors are convinced that she needs a husband, of course. She seems to be on the fence about that until 1839 when she meets her first cousin, Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha.
All right.
We're going back to that will again.
Yep.
There's plenty of men running around Saxe-Coburg and Gotha.
There sure are.
Actually,
they're probably not as hot as Leopold. Just saying.
Yeah. So she immediately falls in love with Albert.